Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is pretty laser focused. We're taking a deep look at some sources you, the learner, sent us that examine this really fundamental shift in how people are choosing to organize their lives.
That's right. We're talking about moving decisively beyond the couple.
Exactly. And it's such an essential subject because for most of the 20th century, the couple, that two-person unit, it wasn't just celebrated, it was basically cemented as the default unit of all kinds of stability,
Yeah.
economic, social.
Oh, absolutely. It was the bedrock. But the sources we're looking at today argue that the material reality of the 21st century has just, completely changed the game.
It seems like this model, this ideal of stability organized around just two people it's no longer structurally or economically possible for huge numbers of people.
Right. And that's key. The shift we're exploring isn't some niche cultural trend. It's being presented as a required adaptation.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're moving away from that dyad and into a discussion of what the sources call relational ecosystems. We're talking about communal living, shared care, and this phrase that really jumps out.
Shallot-level belonging.
Yes, that phrase. So let's get right into the central thesis here. The argument is that things like distributed care, what's called matristic kinship, and these non-dyadic webs are on the rise.
And not just out of some, emotional preference.
No, out of necessity. As the practical structures needed to support these so-called gestalt minds under what the source calls intense modern material and political strain.
That is the critical insight. When we say gestalt minds, we're talking about the unified collective consciousness of that whole relational unit. It's the group mind that's now becoming, necessary for survival.
So let's start with the big question that caused this fracture. I mean, we've all been culturally conditioned to believe the pair is the ultimate goal. Why are these other structures becoming not just an ideal, but a necessary recognition for so many?
Well, the core analysis in the material it's pretty uncompromising. It says the couple model has become materially untenable.
Materially untenable.
And it's vital to understand this isn't a moral failure. The source is very clear on this. It's not that people are failing to love each other or failing to commit.
Right.
It's because the economic scaffolding that once propped that model up, especially in the post-war era that, canonized it, that scaffolding has just completely disintegrated.
And that's really the key distinction, isn't it? It's about structural economic pressures, not some kind of personal relationship failure.
Absolutely. The whole post-war ideal of the suburban couple, it relied on one thing, a deeply subsidized reality. Housing was cheap. Wages were actually sufficient to support a family on one income.
A reality that sounds like science fiction today.
It really does. And all the necessary care infrastructure, childcare, elder care, it was often just absorbed by unacknowledged, unpaid female labor. So when you list the pressures today, you see why two people just cannot carry that load without fracturing.
So walk us through some of those specifics. What makes the dyad so brittle right now?
Okay, so look at housing first. In major cities all over the world, the cost of just keeping a roof over two people's heads, let alone trying to raise kids, requires two incomes just to tread water. Then you layer on the cost of healthcare, which is so often tied to your job, adding all this professional stress. And then, the real clincher, childcare.
I've seen these numbers. They're staggering.
They are. The source notes that the average cost of full-time childcare now exceeds college tuition in over 30 states in the U.S.
Wow. So you're asking a two-person unit, probably already buried in student debt and dealing with stagnant wages, to somehow navigate a hyperinflated housing market and pay private college tuition for their toddler.
Precisely. And the final pressure is just time, the erosion of time itself. When both people in the couple are working exhausting hours just to cover those costs, the unit fractures because there's zero margin left.
No time, no emotional reserve, no financial buffer.
None. The pressures are just too great to be absorbed by two people alone, no matter how much they love each other. The system is pretty much designed for collapse.
So if the pair can't carry that economic and logistical load, stability has to shift somewhere else. If belonging doesn't organize itself around two individuals, where does it go?
It shifts into the network, into the ecosystem. It moves from being an obligation between two people to being just an inherent quality of the environment itself.
Which brings us to, I think, the conceptual heart of this whole thing, the really fundamental difference between the traditional couple and this relational ecosystem.
Yes, the source points to this radical shift in the very form of belonging. It's a move from exchange to atmosphere.
Exchange to atmosphere. What does that mean in practice?
Well, in traditional pairings, belonging is so often organized around an exchange. right? An implicit contract. You track things.
Like an invisible ledger.
An invisible emotional ledger, exactly. Domestic favors, who needs support this week, who got the promotion. It's a transaction-based system, and it is incredibly high maintenance.
I think we can all relate to that. The stress of constantly trying to balance that ledger in a two-person unit, it puts such a heavy burden on communication because everything has to be explicitly asked for.
That's the psychological load that these ecosystems are trying to dissipate. The source explains that in these settings, care isn't passed back and forth. It's held in the field available ambient steady. It arrives as atmosphere.
So it's less like a direct transaction and more like the background music in a room that everyone just benefits from at the same time.
That's a great way to put it. And the profound psychological relief of that ambient care is that it removes the emotional burden of asking.
Right. Because in a dyad, asking for help can feel like a negotiation or even an admission that your partner wasn't paying enough attention.
It can feel like a test, yeah. But if care is distributed across multiple people, no one has to explicitly mobilize another person to get support. The environment already carries it. If you get sick, the kettle is already on, the groceries are already bought by someone else, and you never had to initiate that request.
So belonging doesn't need to be negotiated because it's already there. It's ambient. It honestly sounds like the antidote to modern burnout.
It's a structural change. In a dyad, your entire emotional and often financial stability hinges on successful negotiation with one single person. That's incredibly brittle. In a resilient ecosystem, that stability is built into the structure itself. It's the air you breathe.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting for me. The practical reality of it, if we're not looking for that intense, one-on-one emotional exchange, what does the stability actually look like day to day?
The source has a great term for it. It calls this daily coherence, parallel presence.
Parallel presence.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because it completely defies our cultural expectation that shared space must mean shared focus. It's about being intimately with other people without needing to be intensely on or for them at all times.
Okay, paint that picture for us. The source had this really vivid image of a morning kitchen scene.
Right. So imagine walking into a shared kitchen at, say, 7 a.m. It's already awake. There isn't one person waiting for you, but the room is. It's operating.
Yeah.
You see these subtle signs of distributed effort. One kettle's already boiling for coffee. Another pot is set for tea. Someone is at the sink just silently rinsing a bowl of fruit. Another person is moving through the room, on their way to the laundry.
And the critical detail, as the source points out, is what isn't happening.
Exactly. No one is interrupting anyone else to demand attention or interaction. And crucially, no one is performing arrival.
Performing arrival. I love that phrase.
It's so good. They're just bodies orienting within a shared space, moving without needing to announce themselves. There's no social overhead required to justify you being there in that moment.
No one is hosting and no one is visiting.
Yes. They're all just existing within this field of established shared effort. This is why if you're looking for that intense, exclusive bond you see in movies, you'll miss the genius of the ecosystem entirely.
Because it doesn't center on high intensity or exclusivity?
Not at all. It doesn't hinge on constant attunement between two people. It relies on peripheral awareness and just established distributed tasks.
And the emotional outcome of that. The source says it lives in the way attention can drift without consequence. What does that really capture?
It captures the absence of urgency. In a high-stakes dyad, if your attention drifts, if you forget to check in, or if you just need space, it can feel like a threat to the whole unit.
Yeah, it can be taken personally.
Right. But in the ecosystem, because the care is distributed, your attention is allowed to drift. You are held by the Gestalt mind without having to be the sole focus of any single person's attention. The pressure is just released.
So, okay, we've covered the mechanics, the ambient care, the parallel presence. What does this all mean for the big picture? How does this structure actually deliver on that promise of security against the huge material pressures we started with?
It's the synthesis. It's where the material and the relational finally meet. When the cost of living housing, time, care is just too high for two people.
Which it is.
Which it is. Distributing that cost and that labor across a wider network, often what the source calls a matristic network, makes the impossible suddenly feasible.
I want to pause on that term, matristic kinship. It sounds a bit academic. What does it mean practically for the listener?
It just means care that doesn't follow the lines of romantic or biological obligation. It's a structure built on functional interdependence. So think of it this way. The person who drives a sick housemate to the doctor is doing it out of a network obligation because it maintains the stability of the whole group.
Not because they're married to them.
Exactly. It's care that flows where it is needed, based on the needs of the ecosystem, not on a specific emotional debt between two people.
So that makes the gestalt mind the actual functional mechanism of survival. It's not just a nice feeling, it's an infrastructure.
It is an infrastructure. The broader implication is that these non-dyadic webs support this unified collective mind as a primary mechanism for surviving the material and political strain of the modern world. This shared infrastructure of ambient care is a practical, immediate necessity. It's adaptation.
So for you, the learner listening right now, this insight really redefines what stability even looks like. It shows that adapting to our current economic reality means shifting focus away from the brittle, stressed-out traditional pair.
And into the resilient strength of this communal, adaptable gestalt mind. It moves the focus from individual success to structural interdependence.
So the stability that the old economic system once gave to the couple, that stability is now being built into the collective organization itself.
You got it. It's not about finding a cosigner anymore. It's about building a co-sustainer.
So to recap the central contrast for everyone, we are seeing a shift from the brittle, economically strained couple unit where all the pressure is internalized until it fractures,
To the resilient, atmosphere-based relational ecosystem where care is ambient and distributed.
which ensures that no single person or even a pair has to bear the entire load.
And this matters because these forms of belonging represent a really profound reorientation towards security. I mean, when you're facing collapsing housing markets, no real social safety nets, the insane cost of raising kids, the Gestalt mind offers a robust, multi-handed solution that two people just cannot match. It's pragmatic survival.
It makes shared living feel less like some kind of utopian fantasy and more like just honest, necessary organization.
I keep coming back to that idea from the source about bodies orienting without announcement and that absence of urgency. And just consider for a moment how much emotional, mental, and logistical energy the traditional couple model spends every single day on performing arrival, on negotiating belonging, on constantly checking in and validating the stability of that two-person unit. It's exhausting work.
All that energy is just consumed by maintenance and anxiety. Right. So our final thought for you is this. If you could take that massive emotional expenditure and redirect it, all that attention, that capacity for coordination, that deep trust, and instead of using it to maintain the dyad, you feed it into supporting the collective stability of an ecosystem. What might that Gestalt mind truly be capable of achieving? Something potent to consider as you rethink what stability looks like in our world today.